What if the glamour of old Hollywood was only skin deep, hiding behind it obsessions that were strange, unsettling, and at times downright disturbing? Beneath the polished images of Golden Age stars lurked secret collections that would have shocked the public and destroyed reputations. Today, we reveal 12 actors whose disturbing secret collections exposed their darkest inner worlds. 1. Gloria Swanson. Gloria Swanson, the dazzling silent film queen, was once the epitome of beauty and poise. But in the quiet years after her stardom waned, Swanson curated a collection that would make most of her fans gasp in disbelief. Her elegant New York apartment housed not priceless jewels or gowns, but skeletons. According to multiple biographers and visitors, Swanson became obsessed with the theme of decay. She collected animal skeletons, Victorian-era taxidermy, and anatomical models. There were delicately arranged bird bones under glass, bat skeletons in silver frames, and even fetal specimens preserved in jars. After her haunting performance in Sunset Boulevard, where she played a delusional aging star surrounded by relics of her past, something seemed to shift in Swanson. Her daughter Michelle recalled her mother displaying these morbid pieces, not with horror, but reverence. She treated a mouse skeleton the way someone else might treat a diamond brooch. Swanson once reportedly said to a visitor, "Isn't it remarkable?" All that beauty reduced to bone. This obsession, many believe, reflected her fear of growing irrelevant, of being forgotten, and of the inevitability of death. By the 1960s, she was selling off her luxury items, furs, jewelry, but still acquiring more bones and anatomical curiosities. When she died in 1983, she asked that certain items be cremated with her. Others were auctioned off, occasionally surfacing in medical and natural history museums, always with the chilling provenance from the collection of Gloria Swanson. 2. George Reeves. To the world, George Reeves was Superman. Strong, moral, indestructible. But inside his Benedict Canyon home, hidden behind a locked door, Reeves kept a secret room that told a far different story. A shrine to a role that both made and ruined him. Jack Larson, who played Jimmy Olsen, described the room as meticulously curated. Reeves preserved every Superman costume he ever wore, hanging them like museum pieces. The capes, boots, even the rubberized S-chest emblem, arranged chronologically, showing signs of wear from each season. But this wasn't a nostalgic collection. Alongside the costumes were piles of rejection letters, internal studio memos, and vicious fan mail. Reeves had tried to move on from Superman, to take on serious roles. But casting directors couldn't unsee the cape. He was typecast forever. One memo coldly read, "Too iconic as Superman. Cannot be considered for romantic lead." The collection was contradictory, full of adoring letters from children and hate-filled rants from adults. Reeves called it his prison scrapbook. Friends say he would wander into the room after drinking and rant at the walls, sometimes wearing a tattered cape over his pajamas. Shortly before his mysterious death, officially ruled a suicide, Reeves' behavior around the shrine grew erratic. He would hold dramatic monologues in the room, as if begging the ghost of Superman to release him. After his death, several close friends reportedly entered the house before the police arrived and removed portions of the collection. Some say it was to protect his legacy. Others claim the shrine contained writings and photos that suggested he never truly escaped the weight of the red cape. Whatever was taken has never resurfaced. 3. Peter Lorre, The Cabinet of Medical Horrors. To audiences, Peter Lorre was the embodiment of eerie charm. His haunting performance in M and sinister roles in noir classics carved his legacy in stone. But behind the scenes, Lorre had a disturbing obsession: a private museum of pain. According to close friends and collaborators like Vincent Price, Lorre began collecting antique surgical tools during the 1940s. It started innocently, props for research. But it soon evolved into a dark and expansive collection that filled an entire room in his home. Scalpels, bone saws, trephination drills for cutting into skulls, bloodletting devices. The more archaic and brutal, the better. One guest recalled Lorre gleefully demonstrating 19th-century dental pliers meant to extract molars without anesthetic. He wasn't interested in pristine historical pieces. He wanted items that conveyed human suffering. But the collection didn't stop with tools. Lorre owned Victorian anatomical models, medical textbooks with hand-drawn images of deformities, and even 19th-century forensic photographs, many too graphic for publication today. His fascination with the human body likely had a personal root. Lorre suffered from chronic pain and a congenital spinal condition. His long-term morphine addiction gave him a complex relationship with medicine, simultaneous dependence and resentment. Friends believe his collection was a way of mastering his fear through control. If he could own the tools, he could symbolically dominate the pain. As his health deteriorated in the 1960s, he became obsessed with collecting pharmaceutical containers that once held morphine, laudanum, and other opiates, visual representations of the substances that both sustained and destroyed him. After his death in 1964, Lorre's collection was quietly sold through specialty dealers. Occasionally, his items resurface at auction. But to those who visited his surgical salon, the image remains chilling. Hollywood's horror icon, surrounded by relics of real-world agony. 4. Tallulah Bankhead, the Shrine of Forgotten Lovers. Tallulah Bankhead was outrageous, witty, and sexually liberated long before it was fashionable or accepted. But behind the legendary one-liners and affairs with both men and women lay a secret shrine that few ever saw. A meticulously organized collection of mementos from her countless lovers. Known among close friends as her memory drawer, Bankhead's collection wasn't filled with sweet love notes or jewelry. It contained actual physical remnants, locks of hair, cigarette butts stained with lipstick, used handkerchiefs, and even fingernail clippings. Some boxes reportedly held even more intimate items, each carefully preserved. Her longtime maid, Evelyn Hunt, told biographers that Bankhead stored these items in velvet-lined compartments, labeled with names and dates like a catalogue of romantic conquests. Each box told the story of a night, an affair, or in some cases, a single fleeting encounter. Gossip columnist Walter Winchell once alluded to her collection in the 1930s, hinting that some high-ranking officials might be shocked to learn what body parts she had preserved. Legal threats followed. The story was buried, but the rumors never faded. Despite her public image of detachment, "I'm a one-night-stand kind of girl," she'd famously quip, those closest to her knew the collection was sacred. During bouts of depression or professional failure, she would sit with the boxes, arranging the contents like tarot cards, whispering to them as if summoning past comfort. The collection allegedly contained items from Hollywood royalty, royalty itself, and even political figures, though names were never confirmed. After Bankhead's death in 1968, her sister discovered the trove. Horrified by its contents, she destroyed everything, and with it, the final evidence of Bankhead's contradiction. An icon who feigned indifference, but secretly clung to every intimate encounter, like it was the only thing tethering her to reality. 5. Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins will forever be known as Norman Bates. the eerily soft-spoken motel keeper in Psycho, whose sinister smile still haunts cinema. But few people knew how deeply the role affected Perkins off-screen, and how far he went to preserve its presence in his private life. According to close friends, biographers, and even his co-stars, Perkins began collecting props from Psycho during filming. At first, it was harmless. A newspaper prop here, a motel key, there. But by the time filming wrapped, Perkins had allegedly acquired a stuffed bird from Norman's office, a sliver of the infamous shower curtain, and even the wig stand used to hold Mother's disguise. Over time, these pieces became the nucleus of what friends dubbed Norman's Corner in Perkins' Los Angeles home. By the mid-1970s, the collection included a record player used in the film, a facsimile of the murder knife, and even a broken motel sign salvaged from the backlot. But what truly disturbed visitors was how Perkins interacted with the collection. According to Psycho 2 co-star Meg Tilly, he would sometimes speak in Norman's voice while showing her the items, slipping into character so naturally it felt like he'd never left. Biographers suggest the collection served as both catharsis and entrapment. Perkins resented being typecast, but was also magnetically drawn to the persona. He even dressed the dolls in outfits worn by key male figures in his life, creating what some described as a haunted miniature autobiography. After Perkins died of AIDS complications in 1992, his widow quietly distributed most of the items. Some went to trusted friends. John Waters is said to have kept the stuffed crow. Others vanished into private collections. But the story of Norman's Corner lives on, a shrine not to a character, but to the identity that Anthony Perkins could never fully escape. 6. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was once the face of American beauty. Sensitive, cerebral, and devastatingly handsome, he electrified the screen in A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity. But one moment would fracture that image forever: his 1956 car crash. The accident shattered Clift's face and launched a downward spiral of addiction, depression, and self-hatred. According to his close friend Elizabeth Taylor and biographer Patricia Bosworth, Clift began a disturbing habit shortly after the crash, documenting his physical and emotional unraveling with obsessive precision. He collected before and after photographs of himself taken from identical angles. He saved X-rays, surgical tools, medication bottles, and even clippings from tabloids that speculated about his changed appearance. The collection was kept in custom-built boxes, each labeled with dates and procedures. But the most haunting part? Clift would spend hours comparing his youthful headshots with recent ones, using a magnifying glass to chart every line, every collapse of skin. He recreated old poses just to see what had changed. It was as if he was both curator and coroner of his own beauty. Friends sometimes found him sitting on the floor of his bathroom, surrounded by photos and whispering to them, asking himself how it all went so wrong. His companion, Lorenzo James, later said Clift couldn't let go of the man he used to be, so he turned himself into a living exhibit, one that slowly decayed in front of his own camera. After his death in 1966, his brother reportedly removed the entire collection before police could arrive. Some say he destroyed it out of shame. Others believe portions still exist, hidden in family archives. Either way, Clift's collection is one of the most chilling testaments to what happens when your greatest asset, your face, becomes your greatest torment. 7. Mae West. Mae West, the queen of double entendres and bold sexuality, lived her life like a one-woman revolution. But behind the scenes of her wisecracks and corseted curves was a private obsession that few ever knew about: a collection of dolls that looked like her former lovers. According to her longtime companion Paul Novak and housekeeper Louise, West began her unusual collection in the 1930s after a painful breakup. She commissioned a small cloth doll from a costume designer, dressed to resemble the man who had left her. It didn't stop there. Over the decades, her doll collection expanded to include dozens of miniature men, each supposedly modeled after real lovers, co-stars, and even studio executives. West called them her silent gentlemen. Each doll wore custom-fitted outfits, mimicking real clothes worn by their human inspirations. Some even allegedly contained personal items like cufflinks or locks of hair. What disturbed those around her was how seriously West treated the dolls. She talked to them, sometimes for hours. She'd consult them before business decisions. During her later years, isolated from the evolving Hollywood scene, she reportedly arranged them around her bedroom, assigning each a role in her life story. The collection was more than vanity or sentimentality, it was control. West, who had always weaponized her sexuality to dominate men, found comfort in turning her past lovers into literal objects under her care. Some biographers even called it a feminist inversion. A woman freezing the male gaze by encasing it in cloth and thread. After West's death in 1980, the dolls were divided among family and private collectors. A few have surfaced in Hollywood, memorabilia auctions, though their full origins are usually disguised. But for those who saw the collection in its prime, it was more than just a display. It was a twisted autobiography sewn in silk, stitched in longing, and stuffed with power. 8th. Lupe Velez. Lupe Velez, known to audiences as the fiery Mexican Spitfire, captivated audiences with her beauty and defiance. But inside her Beverly Hills mansion, she maintained a collection that blurred the line between devotion and desperation, an altar that merged Catholicism with folk magic. After her turbulent relationship with Gary Cooper and a tumultuous marriage to Johnny Weissmuller, Velez became obsessed with protecting herself spiritually. According to her longtime housekeeper Maria Martinez, Velez converted a section of her home into a hybrid shrine, part Catholic chapel, part brujeria ritual space. Her collection included dozens of saint statues, many altered with personal items from ex-lovers, rings, locks of hair, scraps of clothing. Votive candles contained embedded photographs. Some objects were labeled with intentions: justice, revenge, peace, fertility. She kept wax figures, prayer books, and handwritten petitions she'd read aloud during nightly rituals. After breakups, Velez was known to perform symbolic punishments: burning photos, stabbing wax effigies, or wrapping items in rosaries while reciting prayers in Spanish and Latin. Her spiritual rituals weren't just for protection, they were about control. The collection grew darker in the months before her suicide in 1944. On the night she died, friends found the shrine had been rearranged. On her bedside table, 3 black candles, a child's prayer book, and a small wax figure some believed represented the unborn child she was rumored to be carrying. While some of these stories may be sensationalized, multiple sources, including biographers and house staff, confirm that Velez maintained a deeply personal, sometimes disturbing collection that merged spirituality, heartbreak, and rage. In the end, her shrine wasn't just about faith. It was a desperate attempt to bind the chaos of her life into a ritual she could control. 9. Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton's life was a slow-motion tragedy played out in headlines. From silver screen siren to scandal-ridden outcast, her fall from grace was brutal. But what shocked those who knew her was that she documented it all, meticulously. In the final years of her life, Payton maintained what neighbors and biographers called her wall of shame. It wasn't metaphorical, it was real. A room filled with artifacts from her descent, hotel room keys from cheaper and seedier establishments over time, eviction notices framed like portraits, letters from once admiring lovers turned demeaning propositions. According to her biographer Raymond Straight, Payton even curated photos of herself arranged chronologically, starting from radiant studio stills and ending in mugshots and tabloid photos of her disheveled, intoxicated self. When guests visited, she'd sometimes show them these photos, commenting dryly on how far she'd fallen. Far from self-pity, Payton treated the collection like an art installation. She called it the truth, even though it pained her. Her son later said she saw it as a form of control. If she couldn't stop the downfall, she could at least narrate it. Before her death at 39, Payton reportedly spent her final months organizing the collection, hoping someone would preserve it after she was gone. Her son, overwhelmed by grief, destroyed most of it. But the story survives through interviews and scattered remnants. A museum of ruin curated by the woman it ruined. 10th Clara Bow, Clara Bow, the original It Girl, embodied the wild energy of the Roaring Twenties. But the fame that made her adored also destroyed her emotionally. Behind closed doors, Bow maintained a collection that showed the scars her public couldn't see. According to friends and family, Bow assembled dozens of scrapbooks filled exclusively with negative press. Gossip columns, court rumors, and even cruel cartoon caricatures mocking her Brooklyn accent and lack of formal education. She organized them chronologically, annotating many with comments like lies or true. In the 1950s, decades after leaving Hollywood, Bow was still adding to the scrapbooks whenever her name appeared in tabloids or retrospectives. Her son recalled her pacing the room, flipping through them, muttering rebuttals to insults long past. More disturbing were the caricatures, grotesque drawings of her early life, mocking her poverty and grammar. Bow would sometimes talk back to them, defending herself aloud. It was as though she needed the pain to feel real, to remind herself who she truly was. Diagnosed with schizophrenia later in life, Bow's obsessive collection became both punishment and comfort, a reminder that she had mattered, even if she was mocked. After her death in 1965, her children destroyed many of the volumes but donated others to archives, painful but necessary reminders of what fame often costs those who never asked for it. 11. Howard Hughes. And finally, the most notorious collector of all, Howard Hughes, director, aviator, billionaire recluse. But his collection wasn't gold or Oscars, it was his own filth. By the 1950s, Hughes's obsessive-compulsive disorder had worsened to pathological extremes. In his penthouse, he collected jars of urine, carefully labeled and stacked, believing they held medical clues hidden by deceitful doctors. He refused to discard tissues he touched, convinced they carried dangerous germs. Newspapers were stacked feet high to insulate him from contamination, eventually blocking off rooms completely. At one point, entire corridors of the Desert Inn in Las Vegas became impassable due to his bizarre hoarding habits. Hughes's collection was a manifestation of total psychological collapse. What had once been genius and charisma had curdled into madness. He died in 1976, alone, emaciated, and surrounded by the physical remains of his fear. Unlike most stars on this list, Hughes's descent is fully documented through medical records, FBI files, and staff interviews. There's no myth here, only tragedy. Behind the dazzling lights of old Hollywood were deeply human figures, broken, desperate, and haunted. These secret collections weren't just oddities. They were mirrors of pain, loneliness, and obsession. They remind us that fame may give you a platform, but not peace. And sometimes, what you gather in the dark says far more than what you shine in the spotlight.